Hey everybody, Jerrel here. Thanks for joining me. Just wanted to thank everyone for all the support they've been showing regarding the game and the development behind Silver Falls. And I just wanted to let you guys know that I really appreciate all your support and well wishes and your understanding and patience for the game. I've been working crazy hard this week trying to get that next update done. Nintendo of Europe has almost finished processing. They let me know that they finished approving the 1.1 update for Europe. So hopefully within a week that will go live. And I'm working crazy hard on 1.2. So there's going to be a lot of fixes in 1.2. We had a bit of a software issue in terms of the development environment, and it resulted in the build that we sent to Nintendo. There's some problems with the build due to the software, and that's been causing random glitches, and a lot of different things in the game are happening for different players. So I'm really sorry about that. So I'll take extra care to make sure that I'll double check that and make sure it doesn't happen. I wasn't aware that the software is capable of messing up that badly, but I'll make sure that I'll handle it this time. One of the big changes that we'll be seeing in 1.2 is the enemy AI. People have been giving feedback on the battle system, and so I've made some fine-tuned adjustments to it, and I've improved it quite a bit. Enemies that are like the wolves and things like that, they'll no longer phase into you, and their heads won't go through your body, because previously enemies were sort of going into the player and it was making it very difficult to fight them. So enemies will actually stay back a little bit farther now. It'll give you a better chance to deal with them reasonably. Enemies now won't just sit there and let you wail on them with a fast melee weapon, which was you were capable of doing that before. You could take something like a combat knife or hammer. And I did mean that by design as a sort of like a strategy to deal with it, but looking back at it, I think I can find a more interesting way to deal with enemies. And so what'll happen is if you are sort of slowly chipping away at an enemy's health that way in a sort of a cheesy way, what'll happen is enemies now have an enraged state, so they'll give off a bit of a howl, and for a second or two, and it's different for every enemy, but they'll be vulnerable for a moment to just free damage. But after their howl, they'll enter an enraged state. You'll see some steam coming off of them, and what they'll do is they're unstoppable. So you can damage them, but there's no way to flinch them, no way to slow them down, and they'll charge you. Most enemies in their enraged state will have increased speed or strength or something to some degree, so it's a good idea to sort of avoid enemies in their enraged state. And now enemies won't just randomly grapple you. The game was designed to where I really wanted people to rely on the grapple weapons, but based on feedback and then a bit more testing, there are certain fights that can seem really unfair when an enemy can suddenly grab you. So what will happen now is enemies will howl, they'll give off a certain animation, and again, it varies from enemy to enemy, but you have a couple seconds to sort of figure out what they're doing and to get out of their line of sight, because they'll charge you and then they'll grapple you out of that. And again, when they're charging for their grapple, they're unstoppable, so you can damage them, but you will not be able to flinch them. So that's your chance to perform your dodge maneuver, get out of the way. So we've fine-tuned the combat quite a bit. I've reworked the camera system so it works even better. 1.1 had some adjustments and improvements, but 1.2 will be even better. So for tight spaces and things like that, when things get crowded and there's enemies nearby, the camera will behave more fairly and more favorably. It'll make things more clear and easier to see. It'll give you more view of the area, and even the larger enemies and things like that, they won't sort of phase into you, making fights awkward. So there's going to be huge improvements to the battle system. Weapon buffs for frontier fighters. So when you level up your capacity and your power for the weapons, we've given universal buffs all around the board so that weapons will get stronger per level. So while there are glitches in story mode right now that kind of make things really irritating, if you do want to keep playing the game while waiting for the update, Frontier Fighters is quite stable, and I would recommend just sort of grinding out some levels that you like and building up your tokens so you can level up your weapons and things like that, because in 1.2 the weapons will be noticeably stronger. We'll also be adding the ice rod, and that will be a melee version of your ice elemental weapons. There will be certain enemies in Frontier Fighters that are vulnerable to ice, and they'll take more damage. So if you use that ice rod, you'll be able to deal critical damage to certain enemies, and you'll also be able to freeze enemies if you give them enough thumps on the head with your ice rod. I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, there's just going to be a couple more improvements. We'll be adding a map here or there in the game just to help players sort of figure out the layout of the sort of the main street. It won't be a mini map. There won't be a magic arrow that tells you where to go, but there will be a map somewhere in the game to sort of get your bearings based on landmarks and things like that. There's more glitches, sort of like collision glitches and getting stuck in certain places. We'll be fixing that up. We've balanced the late game difficulty. Some people have reported in certain situations, certain fights towards the end of the game can be very difficult, so we've balanced the fairness on that. And we've just added more ways for people to sort of deal with enemies and get through the game without having to get caught on obnoxious fights and things like that. So guys, again, thank you very much for your understanding and your patience. I worked crazy hard this week, so I took half the day off to go hiking and just sort of clear my head, because I sit in my office and stare at my screen all day long. So going for a bit of a hike, and then heading back to the office when this is all done, and then I'll try and crank out more of those fixes. Hopefully within the next 2 days I'll be done doing all of the updates for the patch, and we'll be sending that through to Nintendo. And Nintendo US seems like they can get that pushed out in about 2 weeks or less. And then I'll ask Nintendo Europe. It took them about a month this time, but I'll let them know that we do have a fan base that is expecting the update, so I'll ask if they can sort of put that forward a bit. So thank you very much, guys. I can't thank you enough. I know you're out there showing your support. You're on social media and websites, and you're letting people know how much you enjoy the game, and you're letting me enjoy the game, and it's very exciting for me, because I have so many plans written out for the next year, for the next few years, and I've written out a lot of stories for these characters and a lot of games, and it's really exciting to hear that people enjoy the characters and the story and the lore, because I promise you, everything that you see in 3 Down Stars will pay off to something, and I want to do it in such a way to where when you do get to a point where there is a payoff, you feel, oh man, hell yeah, it was worth it trying to find all that stuff, because this is what it all builds up to. Because I'm a gamer just like you guys. I enjoy anime and movies and whatnot, so when you do find those small details and it leads to something I understand, oh man, that's exciting, yeah. And I want to be able to create something that people can enjoy that with. So yeah, thanks for joining me today, and thanks again for all your patience and understanding. We'll see you again soon in Silver Falls.